Hey everybody, hope you all are doing well and welcome back to Michael's Matters. Now, of course, I am Michael, and this week we are getting a clearer picture of the actual results of the midterm elections that just happened. Now, it turns out Democrats were able to hold back that anticipated surge of Republican wins, but, they still lost some ground, including the House, which is going to result in a more well-balanced triumvirate of a government for the next few years. That's to say that Democrats will keep the presidency and very likely the Senate, but will still have to negotiate to some degree with House Republicans. So the big question is, where does this leave the Social Security programs, especially for those folks who are on Social Security Retirement, Social Security Disability SSDI, Supplemental Security Income SSI, as well as the Railroad and VA Retirement Benefits? Because, just a half week ago or so, the Republicans, filled with zeal and anticipation of mollywhopping all the Democrats across the country, had very brash plans to reform the Social Security programs and potentially affect retirement entitlement programs altogether for millions and millions of Americans. And these changes, they could have resulted in lesser benefits for our friends and our family members and our neighbors who rely on the various Social Security programs. So today we are talking about what 2023 could look like for Social Security and retirement beneficiaries, with programs operating under a divided government between the Democrats and the Republicans. Now, this is Michael's Matters, and before we get to it, if you like these videos, if you find them interesting, if you find them helpful, if you at least find them useful, please don't forget to like and subscribe. That way you can get updates when our newest and most informative videos become available. All right, now let's get down to it. So if we think back a week ago, oh so long ago, remember Republicans imbued with a lot more than, let's call it, the Christmas spirit, were all but assured that they would be able to run the table for the government in 2023 with the House as well as the Senate under their control. But now, as it sits, they only really turned over the House to Republican control, and only by a very slim margin. So it's going to put a big damper on their bellicose rhetoric about making cuts to retirement programs. So things that included putting Social Security programs up for reauthorization votes every 1 to 5 years, potentially privatizing Social Security and putting everybody on government versions of 401ks, or even raising the minimum age to be eligible for Social Security benefits, all of which were presented as solutions to prolong and maintain the Social Security program before it collapses. But now, with just the control of one branch of government, the House, and really only by a hummingbird's hangnail, their grandiose ambitions for changing Social Security programs are going to have to be pared down. Now, when we look at what they had planned to do, the cornerstone of the Republicans' plan to make Social Security, quote-unquote, more solvent was laid out in their proposed budget entitled The Blueprint to Save America, where they talked about how they would improve Social Security retirement as well as Social Security Disability, so SSDI, and SSI, Supplemental Security, as well. So let's start with SSI, where the Republicans' perspective on this program that supports 5 million Americans across the country and assists some of the most neediest people in our country. For them, the quote is, under the current program, states have incentives to push families to enroll in SSI. Tragically, children who receive SSI payments often become dependent on the program as adults, end quote. Which is true. There are a lot of children who go from SSI as dependents and children to being dependents as adults, but it's not because they are on SSI payments, but rather because of the myriad of factors that leads folks to be low income in our country. So in this budget, it gives more control of the program and its spending to states through block grants. Quote unquote, this would allow all 50 states to experiment and to better serve their citizens, such as through empowering those individuals to enjoy the dignity of work and service if they are able, end quote. So I'm not sure if there is a clearer prediction of what they had hoped to achieve if they had full control of the House and the Senate, but for sure, they are ignoring the factors that cause poverty in our country and just trying to cut benefits in hopes that it'll leave a majority of those people in situations magically better off, which, let's face it, is not how that works. Next, for Social Security Disability, where their thesis statement basically sums it all up by saying the DI program current design traps far too many people in the program by making them unable to earn a living even if they get healthier and want to return to work, end quote. The solutions put forward in the budget propose things like requiring Social Security Disability insurance applicants to have worked more in the recent years to qualify. Right now, in general, to be eligible for SSDI, a person must have worked 5 out of the last 10 years to qualify. This proposal would be to shorten that time frame to 6 years and require workers to have worked at least 4 years of those last 6 years. So not only is it closing the window of opportunity that would have had to have worked over the last couple of years, but it's also expanding the amount of time during that time frame that somebody would have had to have worked to be able to get eligibility for the program. Now, when we think about this at the obvious level, the results are exactly what you think they would be trying to do. They are trying to cut down as many people who could potentially need assistance due to a disability and shaving it down to just those lucky few individuals who actually happen to fit within those very narrow time windows, regardless of their actual needs. So again, it is a vapid attempt to try to pare down Social Security Disability and leave those folks hanging out high and dry who don't meet those very strict qualifications if it had passed. Now, lastly on the budget proposal is how they would change Social Security Retirement, which again, could have huge ramifications for the millions of Americans who would be becoming eligible for Social Security benefits in the next couple of years, and realistically, for generations to come, even in my generation. Now, their solutions include changing the equation for how benefits are calculated to decrease how much benefit is eligible based off someone's credit and income. And to be fair, there actually is one point that sort of makes sense. It's a point where they want to, quote unquote, reward work. And how they would reward work is by eliminating the Social Security Retirement Earning Test, or RET, that penalizes older Americans and seniors and retirees for working as well as taking Social Security benefits when they're under the full retirement age. And so if you're curious, I'll put a link up here if you want to look at that video and kind of understand how working while taking Social Security benefits when you're under the FRA, the full retirement age, could have negative effects on your Social Security checks. But the Republicans are proposing to get rid of this. Now, this is something that I agree with 1,000%, because there are millions of seniors right now who could be working, who could be putting their experience skills to use, but are incentivized not to because their Social Security checks will be docked for working a little too much. But that being said, that I agree with this one single aspect of their budget, doesn't change the fact that it wouldn't be worth the Faustian bargain price of sacrificing this next point that they are hoping to do, is to raise the age of the full retirement eligibility for Social Security Retirement. And oh boy, this is a big one. So in the budget, there is a bullet point called, quote unquote, adjusting the retirement age to reflect longevity, end quote. And the long and the short of it is essentially that since people are living longer, they are outstripping the numbers of workers needed to support each retired person on Social Security benefits, which is sort of true. Even according to Social Security themselves, in 1945, there were 41.9 workers to cover every single person who was on Social Security. Now, that number went down in 1960. The ratio changed to 5 to 1 workers for every one person on Social Security. And right now, we are at 2.8 people who are working for every one person who is on Social Security. So it's definitely not sustainable, especially if we continue this downward demographic change. This is exactly part of the reason why the full retirement age for people born after 1960 now have to wait till 67 to reach their full retirement age, rather than 65 like many of our parents and grandparents. Now, the solution proposed to this is to link the normal retirement age to life expectancy of retirees, which would not begin until after those who are reaching 62 years old in 2040 hit their full retirement age. Now, when we think about it, when I think about it, that means that I'm not going to be 62 by 2040, and that means that people in my generation and below are going to take the full brunt of this proposed change if it actually happened. Additionally, they would change the benefit calculator from based on your benefits on how much you earned over the last 35 years to the last 40 years of earning, which sounds good. You're like, you get more years of earning, but when you look at the actual trend of how people's earnings are over their lifetime, you begin to see that 35 of the top years is usually pretty good, but if you go to 40, those extra 5 years tend to be added on to the bottom side when you're younger and you're actually making less money, ultimately decreasing the benefits that you are eligible for because those younger years are factored in, which brings down that average. So, it's kind of a sly way to bring those costs down. Now again, these are just some of the reforms the Republicans were hoping to make had they gotten the full red wave and taken back both the House and the Senate. But now, with just the Senate, luckily, it is unlikely that the GOP will be able to do much in the way of making these changes. At the moment, the best that they could probably hope for is to slow down all the government processes and to drag their feet in the upcoming budget ceiling fight with the hopes of getting a few concessions on their changes to Social Security and Medicare. But that being said, they will have control of some of the committees that are powerful and have some agency within the realm of Social Security benefits. So, for example, the House Ways and Means and Budget Committee. With controls of these committees, they will still have a very vocal and important place to voice some of these changes and even implement them if they can attract some of the more conservative or centerline Democrats to their side. Furthermore, during the budget fight, if they want to burn the few bridges that they have left with older Americans, Republicans could hold out on the budget, holding the entire economy and country hostage in exchange for very few painful, politically advantageous, at least for them, cuts to programs like Social Security and Medicare. So look, I fully understand two things about the current situation of Social Security programs, like Social Security Disability SSDI, Supplemental Security SSI, as well as Social Security Retirement. First is that something needs to be done to ensure their longevity. There's no arguing that. Second is that the solution should not be to bring more pain than the problem is bringing. And at the root of Republican solution is the idea that paying these painful penance are now the price of future stability of the Social Security programs, and it just can't be true. For example, the issue of not having enough workers to cover those who are on SSA benefits and retirement benefits right now, well, you know what? It's pretty easy. We can get more workers. If only there were hundreds of thousands of people out there in the world who are willing to work at any cost in this country to get better lives. Now, I know that the only problem is that those folks who want to work are far too far away. They're scattered around the world and they would never ever come to the United States. Or maybe, perhaps, wait a second, they are on our border, literally trying everything humanly possible to get in and to work. And maybe this crazy idea of getting them here legally and giving them an ability to work might actually bring that ratio back into whack. Also, I actually do like the incentives in the proposals to keep older Americans working, especially for those who want to and are able to and they can. This makes 100,000 billion% of sense. I mean, the most experienced, most efficient, and most productive workers in our economies are those people who have worked at their jobs and honed their crafts for the last 20, 30, 40, or even 50 years. Why wouldn't you want these valuable workers to keep working? So why are we punishing them for doing so, for working, by docking their Social Security benefits? That one just doesn't make sense. And lastly, for baby boomers, look, it is our duty as a nation to uphold the promises to these folks who are now in a position to make good on them. We are simply going to have to put more resources into Social Security programs, so SSDI, SSI, as well as Social Security Retirement, until the population bubbles, or the equivalent of this golf ball going through the garden hose, runs its course through the system and gets back to some semblance of functionality and balance. Because it's not fair, it's not conscionable, and it's just not right to try to cut benefits now, because it's no longer convenient politically or even financially, after all the work is put in, to not give the benefits to those who deserve it and who were promised it. I mean, I hope that as a nation, they keep that promise to me as well, too. Now, this is Michael's Matters, and I hope that you enjoyed this video. And if you did, if you found it interesting, if you found it helpful, or if you at least found it useful, please don't forget to like and subscribe. That way you can get updates when our newest and most informative videos come out. All right, so for Michael's Matters, I'm Michael, hoping that you take care of yourselves, take care of others, and have a happy, healthy